Hey, my name is Rowan Smith and I want to welcome you to the Training for Trekking podcast. Now, this is the world's very first podcast which is entirely dedicated to helping you train, prepare and conquer your upcoming hike, trek or mountain adventure. So once a week, I'm going to be giving you quality and practical information on the subjects of physical preparation for trekking, dealing with altitude and nutrition on the trail, so you can know everything you need to be doing to have the best chance of a safe, enjoyable and successful adventure. So now you know what you're in for. Let's get into today's episode. Alright, hello guys. Today we are talking through a little teaching lesson from a recent event of mine about not underestimating nature and taking the little things seriously. Now, I have literally just come out of the surf today before recording this podcast, and I've had a little incident which has inspired this episode. So basically over the summer in Australia, I've been really getting into my beach sports. I've been learning to surf alongside I've been also getting back into my bodyboarding, which I used to love as a teenager. And essentially I've been going out on the surf. I've been deciding, on the nice, small, easy days, I'm trying out the surfboard and trying to learn my way around that. And on the sort of bigger days or not so nicer days, I'm taking the bodyboard out because I can ride that in pretty much any condition. And today we rolled up into the beach. The conditions weren't incredibly great. They were a little bit lumpy, a little bit not so pretty. Didn't look so big. And I was like, you know what? I think today is a bit of a bodyboarding day today. So I took that out and away I went. And it didn't look very big from the shore. So I was like, you know what? No, it looks pretty good. Should be pretty cruisy and we'll just have a little splash around for an hour or so. And I was with another mate. And we were paddling out, having a chat, having a yarn, having a good time. It was all pretty casual. And then we're about 3/4 out on this through the surf. And then all of a sudden, this big old wave came through, which was probably a good 4 times bigger than anything we'd seen that day, whether it was from the shore or as we were paddling out. And even worse than that, it was really, really heavy in the sense that it had a lot of more water moving behind it and it had a lot of power moving behind it. So, as it came through, as you do, so we were sort of did a duck dive and tried to get underneath it so we can keep on going. And because this was so powerful, it did tumble us around a little bit. It sucked us in, it threw us around. It wasn't much fun. And we came up, we're like, oof, you know what? That wasn't much fun. And that's just part of bodyboarding, part of surfing. It is just part of the ocean experience. The ocean will always catch you out. You always get yourself in these particular situations. But there were 2 things which made this a little bit worse than it could have been. And 2 things that I sort of overlooked and I was a little bit complacent about, which did make these things a bit annoying. Now, number 1 is I wasn't wearing a leash. Now, traditionally, usually when you're bodyboarding, you have a leash which connects the board to your arm. So if you do happen to have, a tumble, if you happen to get washed around by a wave, if you happen to let go of your board, then the leash saves it so you don't have to worry about it. But for me, recently, I've been a bit complacent. I've been surfing small waves. I haven't really been doing so much size and I've actually really been enjoying not actually surfing with this leash. And so I haven't been using this sort of, added safeguard. Now, in this particular situation, when the wave washed me around, I was like, my gosh, I do not want to lose my board because that's going to be a nightmare. I'm going to be stuck in the middle of the surf without a board. I'm going to have to swim in and that's an absolute nightmare. And so I was holding on for dear life as I was getting washed around from this wave. And I was really, really holding on with my hands. And the issue here was seeing I was getting absolutely tumbled around. I came up and there was a lot of power behind it and I ended up hurting my wrist. And I'm pretty sure I sprained my wrist. It's a bit uncomfortable now just for the fact that I couldn't let my board go and just float around and just deal with it. But I had to hold on to it. And that was mistake number 1. Now, mistake number 2 was my board shorts or my boardies or the shorts I was wearing in the surf. Now, I bought these a few months ago, and over the last probably 4 or 5 weeks, I've been on a personal weight loss journey because I put on quite a few kilos over summer, and I've been losing a bit of kilos. I've noticed that the boardies are getting a little bit too big for me, and they've been sort of falling down a little bit in the surf. But since it's been little surf, I've been kind of ignoring it. Now, in this particular situation, seeing it was a big old wave and I was absolutely tumbled, I came up from that wave and my boardies were down around my knees. And I was, not in a good place and I was like bare-assed and, in a bit of a situation. And, that by itself wouldn't be too bad. But if you've ever been surfing, you've been in the ocean, these big waves, they never come as one. There's always 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 afterwards. And after this particular wave, there are another 4 waves I had to get under, which were very, very powerful and quite a big, but my body's around my knees. So the issue with this was when I was going under the waves, not only did I have to get under them, but to keep my boardies on my body so I didn't end up just surfing around with nothing on me, I was doing this weird motion with my back and with my legs, and I was kind of really arching my back. And because this surf was very, very powerful, I ended up hyperextending my back quite a bit and getting quite a bit of force put into me when I was in that hyperextended position. So by the time I got under those 4 or 5 waves, I came up and I was like, oof, you know what? My back is feeling pretty uncomfortable. And, I went through the rest of the surf, had a good time, had a chat, but I came out of the surf and I was like, you know what? I'm feeling battered. My wrist is sore. My back is sore. And it could have very easily been avoided if I just, not gotten complacent. If I'd taken action on making sure I had boardies that fit me. And if I'd taken action and, hadn't been complacent with my leash and I was actually wearing that. And so this is, a relatively funny story about my surfing experiences. And, it's not much fun to go through, but it is something to laugh at now. But the moral of the story, and I want to link this to your hiking because it is a very, very common thing that I see from many, many hikers. I've done myself and other people, do quite often as well. Now, when it comes to hiking, nature will always rear its ugly head when you underestimate it. When you get complacent about the little things that you're doing or the little bits and pieces you do to keep yourself safe, that is when you get yourself into trouble. And that is not what we want to do in hiking. Now, whether you're anywhere in nature, you're always going to put yourself in a dodgy situation if you are in the middle of nowhere and things are going wrong. So some classic examples of this in regards to hikers, which I hear quite often, is number one, if you do struggle with some type of foot or knee pain, typically I always recommend using your hiking poles, using your trekking poles. But quite often, on the easier hikes and the moderate hikes, sometimes people don't want to bring them, which is fair enough. But in this situation, if you are getting complacent, it's probably going to become the time where, you'll step on a loose rock, you'll step on a muddy, some muddy terrain, you'll have a slip, stumble, fall or slide or something like that. And if you had your poles, you probably would stay safe, but in the situations where you don't, when you've been complacent, that's when something goes wrong. Or on the other side of things, with your boots, like I quite often hear from hikers saying, I've got really, really old boots. I know I need to replace them, but, over time it's been getting worse. And sometimes, it'll be a case of the grip on the bottom, and then they'll have a slip, stumble or fall, because the grip just doesn't work for them. Sometimes it'll be a case of, it's just not giving them support they need. And, if you're aware that your boots are getting old or your boots need replacing, get it done. Don't be like me with my boardies where I needed to replace them. Be proactive, get it done. Or if your shoelaces are always coming undone, which is another one that always happens to hikers. No one ever talks about it. Stepping on your shoelaces and tripping over, it's not a good thing. And it does happen to hikers. So if you're aware that your shoelaces are always coming undone, get them replaced, get them sorted, and get that little thing sorted. If your weather gear sucks and you're aware that there's something going wrong with that, get it sorted. Don't put yourself in the position where it's going to go wrong. And also, of course, the common sense thing of always bringing more food, more water than you need. Because the second you start underestimating nature, whether it's your hiking, whether it's your surfing, whether it's anything else, it's always going to rear its ugly head. You're always going to put yourself in a dodgy situation, which you don't need to be. So today's episode is really just to give you a little kick in the bum. If there's something like this that you've been ignoring, that you've been getting complacent with, that maybe you're not doing what you know you should be doing, maybe it's time to make that action before something goes wrong, before you get in a dodgy situation. Take action. Don't be like me and make these silly mistakes and end up kind of getting battered and sore and having issues. Take the action now, do the right thing, and get on top of it. So food for thought. I hope it does prompt a few of you to really, really take action on this, because the little things, can always make a big difference, either good or bad. So get around it. So thank you for listening today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed this. Hearing a little bit of story about my shocker, and hopefully it doesn't, inspire you to take some action there. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you very soon. Bye.